This was the scene just a short while ago at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Police clashing with protesters. 12 people were arrested. Hours earlier, protests rocked the University of Arizona, where campus police used chemical irritant munitions to remove protesters.
All the footage is showing the
Around
police
same
basically
time at
accelerating or
UCLA,
instigating violence, though,
Israel
even in
and
the spin.
Palestinian groups were attacking each other, hurling all kinds of objects, a wood pallet, fireworks, parking cones, even a scooter. And before that,
only one side
NYPD
through all that
was
stuff,
able to clear
Right?
Yeah, interestingly, that wasn't mentioned there.
Columbia
God, she's such a
University
bad
after
propagandist.
protesters barricaded themselves inside a campus building. 300 people were arrested at Columbia and City College of New York. But it is unclear how many were actually students. New York City Mayor Eric Adams warned this morning that professional outside agitators are getting involved.
Wasn't just 2 outside agitators arrested? Isn't that what he admitted?
They got new 2 leaders. Who was one of them was that woman who was the wife of a terrorist who wasn't the wife of a terrorist, and then there was another 60-plus-year-old woman who was just some like longtime activist who was invited to do like a sit-in discussion during one of the days. Who was also not there the day.
The way they stretch the truth.
Yeah. Now though they're finessing the numbers to throw in City College too, even though the claim was always that they said Columbia was taken over by outside agitators who had no affiliation with the school. They're throwing in the City College numbers, which is a public university, and also they're counting people who were arrested on the street, who were not on the campus, but they were there that night supporting the protesters from outside the campus, but they got arrested, so they're throwing those numbers in there. It's just ridiculous.
And I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our
So
children.
stupid.
And I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York.
Many of these protests started peacefully with
Hey, who shot those fireworks?
about the war, but in many cases, they lost the plot. They're calling for a ceasefire.
Fuck off, Dana.
Well, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, the day before
They lost
Hamas
the plot.
terrorists.
Wow, she's playing all the hits.
Oh my! That
didn't
has
see
been
that part.
debunked so many times. There have the amount of attacks. Like, there's story after story. Like throughout early October, like I think it was like October 5th or 4th. Israel was attacking Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. Throughout September, they were doing so as well. What ceasefire are you fucking talking about? Absolute fucking bullshit.
Also, she says,
Liar.
but also she says they started out legitimate, and then they lost the plot. And what is her example for that? Like the main thing everyone asks for, a ceasefire. Like, how is that losing the plot? That is like the core. There's two things these protesters want. There's 2 things these student protesters want. Well, a few of them have a bigger list, but on every list I've seen, there's 2 main things. The ceasefire, but that's just like what they want, but they know they have no power there. That's not why they're actually at their school doing it. The main thing they want is they want their school to divest from these arms manufacturers who are supplying Israel with these weapons that are being used to kill innocent Palestinians in Gaza. That's like those are the 2 core things. So to be like, oh, they're calling for a ceasefire. Whoa, these pro-Palestinian protesters lost the plot. What? Like what?
More than 1,000 people inside Israel and took hundreds more as hostages. This hour, I'll speak to an American-Israeli family whose son is still held captive by Hamas since that horrifying day that brought us to this moment. You don't hear the pro-Palestinian protesters talking about that. We will.
You don't hear the media
Now,
talking about
protesting the way
14,000 dead
Israeli
children. I
government-
hate her. Oh my God. Losing my mind.
Prime Minister is
Right.
prosecuting the retaliatory.
All right, no,
war
it's
against
she's
Hamas.
right. I'm gonna dig a tunnel from the bottom of my house. I'm gonna find the Hamas tunnels. I'm sure they've extended it to America by now. I've heard they were working on
Obviously.
it, according to Israel. I'm gonna get down there, and once I see Hamas, I'm gonna start going, What do we want? Release the hostages. When do we want it now? Like, what is it? Like, I don't get what she wants. Of course, Hamas should release the hostages. There should be a ceasefire. Hostages should be released. I don't want to see any civilians involved in this whatsoever. But we don't have any say. We don't have anything to hold Hamas accountable for. I have no power over Hamas. I can occupy a school that I attend as a student to try to force the hand of the administration. That's why I do that. Like,
Also,
that's why I take the streets to tell my government to stop aiding and abetting Israel in bombing Gaza. I can't, I can't go. There's no Hamas doesn't have an embassy in D.C. I can drive to, and I can be like, release the hostages. Like, it's super fucking simple.
It's also worth mentioning there have been ceasefire deals on the table that Netanyahu is the one that has shut them down. He's the one that does not want an end to this.
Oh, absolutely.
There was
the last negotiation.
I was going to say the families of the hostages back in January. They came in to the Knesset and were protesting Netanyahu because they wanted him to take the deal and he wouldn't take it. Like, this is the shit that people don't hear.
And apparently in the last negotiation, and this is kind of fucked up, in that they revealed that they don't have as many hostages in the categories that were being asked for the terms of the trade, such as children, the elderly, stuff like that. Like, they're running out of living hostages because they're getting bombed to death.
And
everyone
it's also
expected would happen.
Right. It's worth noting also that people like Dana Bash, who purports to care about hostages, has said nothing about the Palestinians being held hostage by Israel.
Thousands.
I believe, thousands of people. There's been reports of misconduct with regard to like torture and shit like that. No, just not a peep from them about this, but they care about human rights.
Or the sexual assault of children. That's another one. There's like lots and lots of kids that have been detained without any fair due process or justice. And then there's rampant reports of sexual abuse of children as well. That's all fucked up, right? Like that is, I hate.
She doesn't care
sides.
though.
Like you cannot like even the Piers Morgans of the world who are trying to both sides of this. Like, oh, I bring on people from the left and I bring on people from the right to talk about this. You can't both sides of genocide. No. Like, it's just like
they'll throw out.
It's grotesque.
They'll throw out that all those Palestinian prisoners are there because they're criminals or terrorists or something, even though they're like a bunch of kids. That's not. But of course, when they say release the hostages, they throw in the IDF soldiers as like innocent civilians who should be, who should be part of that deal or whatever, who shouldn't be there. I'm sorry, like my problem with Hamas is that they went after innocent civilians. I think that's wrong no matter what. But in a war, in an occupation, in a blockade, they're allowed to go after the military that's putting their boot on their neck. I'm sorry.
Those are enemy combatants.
Yes.
Hamas is one thing. Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable. And it is happening.
What about the cops that make the Jewish protesters feel unsafe? Does she care at all about that?
Or even
there was a giant
even the
group
protesters
of
generally. Like there really is this complete otherizing of like, how about the Palestinians on campus?
Right.
Do they feel safe? Like they don't exist?
Yeah, they don't care.
Arab Americans, Muslim Americans,
I'm a
do they
UCLA
feel
student.
safe on campus?
I deserve to go here. We pay tuition. This is our school. And they're not letting
This guy's already been outed as a regular agitator. He wasn't trying to go to class. He's been trying to bother the protests nonstop. They were just keeping him away so it would not escalate.
Again, what you just saw.
Oh my
and
God.
those types of people, what they do is they'll pretend as if they're so outraged because of what the protesters are doing. They just don't agree with the protesters. Like currently at my university that I graduated from at PSU, they've taken over the library and they've renamed Miller Library to Rafat Al-Awrir Library. And then you have people screeching about that on Facebook saying, oh my God, we can't even use the library that we're paying for. It's like, first of all, nobody uses the library. I was like one of the 3 people in the fucking library all the time. Nobody uses the library, so shut the fuck up. Second of all, like you're just clutching your pearls because you don't agree with them. They are peacefully protesting because they want their university to divest from Israel. And you can't be honest. Like they are incapable of engaging in good faith with anything that these protesters have to say, with anything that anyone who's anti-genocide has to say. And I'm so sick of it.
Yeah.
Or in Los Angeles, harkening back to the 1930s in Europe. And I do not say that lightly. The fear among
Jesus
Jews in this country
Christ.
is palpable right
Yes,
now.
you do. It couldn't be lighter.
The anti-genocide protesters are like the Nazis. Shut the fuck
Yeah.
up, Dana.
There are so
Comparing
many
the
Jewish
precursor
people
to the
within those
Holocaust
protests
with students. Like, that's ridiculous.
A lot of these protests are like they're partially led by Jewish groups, like Jewish Voice for Peace, Independent Jewish
Oh, I
Voice.
know.
Like these, like, this is
so
of
it
course
turns out
completely
they were
lost
right.
in all
By the
this.
way, there was a dissent of a whole bunch of violent and racist people who were attacking Jewish students, cops, police.
Yeah.
You saw it. in
And the
multiple different
pro-Israel
schools.
counter-protesters at UCLA who were throwing
the ones with
fireworks
weapons.
at them and attacking
boards.
them, yeah.
And
And
Mason.
beating them with boards
Amazing
and
them.
bars.
Also, it was pro-Israel protesters who were doing the terrible chants of "kill the Jews" and other stuff that wasn't covered by the Daily Beast, and luckily people took footage of it. Otherwise,
Oh,
boom,
I forgot
right there. It's
about
like,
that.
yeah, someone
so
on one
much-
of the campuses was asking for the death of the Jews. That happened. It was like, yeah, it was a pro-Israeli protester who was saying, "Come on, everyone, right? Kill the Jews."
And they
right?
shut
Right?
down. They
Just-
had the cops shut down. They had the cops shut down the encampment and the protest because they claimed that people were chanting "death to Jews." And when it came out, it was a pro-Israel protester trying to.
Who was, by the way, kicked out of the protest by the other protesters.
Yeah, they
Like,
booed
didn't
him
want
when he said
person
that. They,
Yeah.
Right,
they
and then-
denounced
and
him
then when
right
a
then
ju-
and there.
It's
And then
all
when a
upside down.
journalist, I forgot
It's all
who,
upside
but
down.
a journalist reached out to the school to say like, "Hey, you ended the encampment. You attacked these protesters. You went after these protesters when we have it on video now that it was the pro-Israel agitators who were chanting that." And the school wrote back, their official PR person wrote back something like, "Aha, so you don't deny it was said. Well, I don't care what the context is. It has no place," as if that was the point, as if they were trying to say like, "Oh, it's okay because it was a no, the point was the pro-Israel protesters were doing it and you guys blamed the pro-Palestine protesters."
I mean, it was said. It doesn't matter who said it or why. Someone said it. So crack the skulls. Send them in. The skull crackers are here.